Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Dr. Barkis Ophthalmology Tutorials. In this video, we will discuss about the watering from eyes. So this is one of the important symptoms for which the patient will seek our attention. This video will be discussing about the various causes of the watering, how to go about a case of watering, and what are the tests you need to do when a patient complains of the watering. Thereby you can find out the cause for the watering, which will help in the management of the patient. Before further watching this video, I request all of you to see my previous video on the anatomy and the physiology of the lacrimal apparatus, because without understanding the anatomy and the physiology of the lacrimal apparatus, it is difficult to understand the tests which will be explained in this video. Okay, I have given the link in the description box. Please do watch the previous video on the anatomy and the physiology of the lacrimal apparatus, and then you can continue with this video. Okay. So the causes of watering can be divided into either hyperlacrimation or epiphora. Hyperlacrimation is where there is excess secretion of the tear film. The drainage system is intact, but there is excess secretion of the tear film, thereby leading to watering of the eyes. In epiphora, there is obstruction to the drainage system. So for this, you need to know about the physiology and the anatomy of the lacrimal apparatus. Okay. So hyperlacrimation you can further divide into the primary hyperlacrimation, reflex hyperlacrimation, and central hyperlacrimation. Primary is quite rare, which is secondary to direct stimulation of the lacrimal gland. Like in case of some of the lacrimal gland tumors or the lacrimal gland cyst can predispose to the primary hyperlacrimation. The second one, that is the reflex hyperlacrimation, is the most common one, where there is reflex watering in case of any of the affections of the ocular surface structures like eyelids or the cornea or the conjunctiva. So if there is anything in the eyelids like the blepharitis or the meibomianitis or even the chalazion, all these can lead to the hyperlacrimation here, that is the affections of the lids. In conjunctiva, if there is any conjunctivitis like allergic conjunctivitis, viral conjunctivitis, any form of the conjunctivitis, and even any insult to the cornea like corneal abrasion, corneal ulcer, all these will lead to reflex hyperlacrimation. And then we have the third one in the hyperlacrimation, that is the central cause, that is cyclical cause, where because of the emotional state patient or the person will have hyperlacrimation. This is one classification. Then we have the important thing which we are discussing now, that is the epiphora. Okay. So epiphora is due to obstruction to the lacrimal passage system. The lacrimal passage system, as I told, it starts from the punctum up to the nasolacrimal duct. So obstruction anywhere from the punctum, the canaliculi, common canaliculi, sac or the nasolacrimal duct, even the nasal polyps, all these will lead to epiphora. Okay. Let's see each one in detail now. So in epiphora, the obstruction can be right from the punctum till the nasolacrimal duct. So what are the causes for punctal obstruction? So in the punctum, it can be a congenital absence of the punctum itself. There is no punctum which is developed at all. So in that case, patient will have epiphora. In acquired causes, the most common is the eversion of the lower eyelid or the atropia, or it can just be a age-related eversion of the lower eyelid. So that can also lead to the epiphora because the punctum is not opposed to the lacus lacrimalis. And some of the causes like the cicatricial conjunctivitis can lead to punctal stenosis. If there is some foreign body which is obstructing the punctal area, that can also lead to the epiphora. The cilia of the eyelids can block the punctal area, leading to epiphora. So these are the punctal causes for the epiphora. Okay. So the second structure in the lacrimal drainage apparatus is the canaliculi, that is upper canaliculi, lower canaliculi, and the common canaliculi. So what are the causes for canalicular obstruction? Again, it can be congenital, where there is congenital stenosis or obstruction to the canaliculi, and it can be acquired like following trauma. The trauma is the most common cause, where there is laceration of the eyelid involving the canaliculi, thereby leading to the formation of the fibrosis or the stricture in the later stage, that is trauma. Or it can be following fibrosis because of other reasons, or it can be even the foreign body which is obstructing in the canalicular region, and even the inflammation of the canaliculi called as canaliculitis can lead to the canalicular obstruction in the later stages. So these are the causes in canaliculi. So the next important structure is the lacrimal sac. So what are the causes in the lacrimal sac which can lead to epiphora or the obstruction? So again we have congenital causes and acquired causes here. In congenital causes, there can be a mucous membrane fold which is there in the lacrimal sac, leading to obstruction to the drainage. Whereas in case of acquired causes, we have the inflammation of the lacrimal sac, that is dacrocystitis. Obstruction can also be following trauma or the strictures in the lacrimal sac. It can be because of the tuberculosis of the lacrimal sac leading to fibrosis of the sac, It can be even following the tumors in the lacrimal sac, which will obstruct the flow of the tear film. Sometimes the syphilis can also be a cause for lacrimal sac obstruction. So in the lacrimal sac obstruction, we have congenital causes where there is a fold of mucous membrane which is obstructing the flow. In the acquired causes, we have the inflammation of the lacrimal sac, that is dacryocystitis following trauma or the stricture formation, or the syphilis, tuberculosis leading to fibrosis, and even the tumors of the lacrimal sac. Next most important structure, that is the nasolacrimal duct. Okay, so what are the causes in the nasolacrimal duct that can lead to obstruction? Again, we have congenital causes and the acquired causes. In congenital causes, this is the most common cause of watering in the newborn babies, that is the congenital obstruction of the nasolacrimal duct. In congenital causes, that is there is non-canalization of the nasolacrimal duct or partial canalization of the nasolacrimal duct leading to the or even there can be imperforated valves. Whereas in case of acquired causes, again we have trauma leading to the damage to the nasolacrimal duct, inflammation of the nasolacrimal duct, and the stricture formation in the NLD, or the stones, or even the tumors in the NLD. So these are the causes for nasolacrimal duct. Next is how to go about a case of watering. That is, whenever a patient presents to you with the complaints of watering, we should find out the cause for watering. You can't just blindly treat any patient of watering as a case of dacryocystitis. Okay, so your examination should be complete enough to find out the cause. So this is the anatomical structure, as you know. Just to recap the things so that it is easy for you to understand. So this is the lacrimal punctum. This is the canaliculi, which has the vertical part and the horizontal part, common canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and the nasolacrimal duct. Okay, so this is the lacus lacrimalis, where the tear film will be pulled here. So the punctum will be opposing the lacus lacrimalis when the lids are firmly opposing the globe. Okay, so these are the essential things which are needed for the drainage of the tear film. So the first test what you should do when you are doing the examination for the watering is the thorough slit lamp examination and the diffuse torchlight examination to carefully look into other causes of hyperlacrimation. Examine the cornea, examine the conjunctiva, as well as examine the lids, thereby rule out any causes which are there in that leading to hyperlacrimation rather than epiphora. So once you have done the thorough slit lamp examination to rule out the causes of hyperlacrimation, go with the examination of the punctum, which is well appreciated in the slit lamp. Look for the opposition of the punctum to the lacus lacrimalis. If there is senile ectropion, eversion of the lower eyelid because of the age-related changes, the punctum will not be opposed to the globe, thereby it is not opposed to the lacus lacrimalis. The tear film which is there in the lacus lacrimalis is not access to the punctum. Even you can rule out some of the causes of punctal obstruction or the atresia of the punctum, okay, or even the foreign body which can be there in the punctum. So rule out all the punctal causes by doing diffuse light examination. Okay, after doing the punctal examination, you can go ahead with a specific test for the watering of the eye. So what are the tests we have? Check for the lacrimal drainage system. We have various tests. These include the regurgitation test, fluorescent dye disappearance test, lacrimal syringing. The next test is Jones dye test, and the dacryocystography or DCG. So I will be explaining all these tests in detail. So all these tests are done to know about where exactly is the obstruction, what is the cause for obstruction. Okay, so each test is discussed under the heading of the procedure and the interpretation of the test. Okay, so coming to the first test, that is the regurgitation test. In that, what we are doing is we are just giving a gentle pressure over the lacrimal sac area, that is just medial to the medial canthal area. Give a gentle pressure over the lacrimal sac area and look for regurgitation of any fluid from the punctum. Okay, if there is any collection of the fluid in the lacrimal sac area, you press this area, the fluid should come out of the punctum. Okay, so that is regurgitation test. It is also called as Roux-Plus. So this is one of the favorite questions for the examiners. They will ask for the full form of Roux-Plus. Roux-Plus is nothing but regurgitation on pressure over the lacrimal sac area. Okay, so this is the Roux-Plus test. So that is the procedure. So what is the inference? If there is some fluid which is coming through the punctum, it means that there is some amount of obstruction either in the lower end of the sac or the nasolacrimal duct. The fluid is not coming out, it means that the lacrimal passage system is patent. So that is the regurgitation test. Next test is fluorescent dye disappearance test. Here 2% fluorescein is instilled into the conjunctival sac. So the fluorescein is instilled into the conjunctival sac and patient is left alone. So what should have happened in the 2 minutes? All the fluorescein which was there in the conjunctival sac should have been drained through the lacrimal sac passage system. So after 2 minutes you examine the patient, and if there is still some fluorescence which is seen in the conjunctival sac, it means that there is some obstruction in the lacrimal passage. If you are not seeing any of the fluorescence in the conjunctival sac, it means the system is patent, and next test is very important, that is the lacrimal syringing. So here, by doing lacrimal syringing, you can almost identify the site of obstruction and what type of inflammation is there in the lacrimal sac area. So what is the procedure? First you anesthetize the conjunctival sac with 4% xylocaine topical eye drops. Put the topical eye drops in the conjunctival sac, wait for some time, and then with the lacrimal cannula so there is something called as lacrimal cannula. So with this you are injecting fluid from the punctum. Okay, so the lacrimal cannula is introduced here and the fluid is injected. Okay, so normally what should happen? Fluid will enter through the punctum, come to the canaliculi, common canaliculi, sac, and then get drained to the nasolacrimal duct. If there is obstruction at any of the site, what will be the result? So if there is obstruction at the punctal area because of any of the reasons like congenital atresia or the foreign body, you will not be able to introduce the lacrimal cannula only. The cannula will not pass at all. Sometimes there can be a small punctum, then you can dilate that punctum with a punctum dilator, then you can introduce the lacrimal cannula. So suppose there is obstruction at the canaliculi, one of the canaliculi. Let's say there is obstruction at the lower canaliculi. So what happens? You are trying to inject the fluid is not going beyond this, so there is regurgitation of the fluid from the same punctum. That indicates that there is some obstruction at the canaliculi. Suppose there is obstruction at the common canaliculi. So then what happens? The fluid you are injecting through this. So fluid comes here, okay, and then goes to the upper canaliculi, comes through the upper canaliculi also, and from the lower canaliculi also to some extent. Because you have placed a cannula here, the space is not so sufficient to drain the fluid, but still there will be some amount of fluid regurgitating from the same punctum also. But important is there is regurgitation of the fluid from the upper punctum as well. So the third set of obstruction is in the lacrimal sac area. So what happens here? You are injecting the fluid through the punctum, the fluid comes here, comes to the common canaliculi, fills the lacrimal sac. But since there is no space for the drainage, it will also come through the upper punctum as well as the lower punctum. So the fluid is coming from both the punctum if there is obstruction at the end of the lacrimal sac. So the same thing will happen if there is obstruction in the nasolacrimal duct area also. So how to differentiate between the common canalicular obstruction from the sac obstruction? So see the space here. The common canaliculi is quite near to the punctum. So whenever you are injecting the fluid immediately regurgitates from the upper and the lower punctum. If the obstruction is at the sac or the nasolacrimal duct area, it will take some time for the sac to get filled, then it will come out. Okay. So the time period for the regurgitation to happen is little delayed when there is sac obstruction or the NLD obstruction. And there is one more important test to differentiate between this canalicular obstruction from the sac obstruction, that is the probe test. Okay. So what is probe test? Here you are introducing a Bowman's probe. That is very thin probe which will be introduced from the lower punctum, and then it will pass through the common canaliculi, and then we have the nasal bone here, and then you are feeling the nasal bone. Okay. So the Bowman's probe is introduced from the punctum, and then it is pushed and then feel the bone. If there is common canalicular obstruction, we have this whole thing which is pushed and you are feeling the bone. So the touch will be little soft. That is called as soft touch. Okay. If there is common canalicular obstruction. Suppose there is obstruction at the lower end of the sac or the NLD, then the probe is passed from here and then it is going through the sac area. We have only the posterior wall of the lacrimal sac, and then you are directly touching the bone. So that gives a hard feeling, that is called as hard touch. Okay. So if there is a soft touch on probing, it means that there is common canalicular obstruction, and if there is a hard touch on probing, it means that there is NLD or the sac obstruction. Okay. Syringing should also be repeated from the upper punctum, and the results are similar to this. So by doing this, now we have found out the site of obstruction, and depending upon the type of fluid which is coming out, if it is the clear fluid which is coming out, it means that there is chronic obstruction, there is no active inflammation indicating chronic dacrocystitis. If there is purulent fluid which is coming out after your test, it means that there is some suppuration which is happening in the sac. So it can be a case of mucocele or the pyocele. Okay, so by doing sac syringing, you can interpret the type of inflammation which is happening as well as the site of obstruction. The next important test what we have is the Jones dye test. Okay, Jones dye test. So this is indicated whenever you see patent lacrimal system on doing lacrimal syringing. You did the lacrimal syringing, it shows that the fluid is passing through, but still the patient is having watering. Then you go ahead with the Jones dye test. Here it has two parts, Jones dye test 1 and 2. In dye test 1, you are differentiating the hyperlacrimation from the partial obstruction of the canalicular system. So what is the procedure? The procedure for Jones dye test is first anesthetize the cornea with 4% xylocaine, okay, and then keep a cotton bud which is dipped in 4% xylocaine near the inferior meatus, that is in the nose, okay, and then stain the conjunctival sac with the fluorescein, and after 5 minutes observe for the staining of the bud. So there are two possibilities, either the bud is stained or not stained. If it is stained, it means that the fluorescein which was there in the conjunctival sac is drained through the nasolacrimal passage system. It means that the cause for watering is hyperlacrimation and there is no obstruction here. If the bud is not stained, it means that there is some amount of obstruction in the nasolacrimal passage system. So what can be the cause for this obstruction? Either it can be partial mechanical obstruction or it can be the lacrimal pump failure. The lacrimal pump which I have discussed in the previous video, so that is not functioning. So how to differentiate these two causes? Then go ahead with your Jones dye test 2. Here the same thing is done. After that again the syringing is done. Means you are injecting the fluid from here. Suppose there was some partial obstruction, means the dye has entered into the lacrimal sac, but because of the partial obstruction it has not gone through. So when you are doing the syringing, you are forcing the fluid, thereby overcoming the obstruction, and you are staining the bud here. Okay, so that means there is partial obstruction. So even after syringing, if the cotton bud is not stained, it means the dye has not entered into the lacrimal system at all because of the lacrimal pump failure or the atony of the lacrimal pump. So this is how you interpret the results of the Jones test. This is important to plan for your surgery. If there is lacrimal atony and you are going ahead with your DCR surgery, it may not help the patient. Okay, so this is about Jones dye test. The next important test is the DCG and the dacrocystography. This is not done routinely. So only whenever you want to know the exact anatomical site of the obstruction, when you are suspecting some tumor of the lacrimal sac or the strictures in the canaliculi, then you can go ahead with your DCG. Here the radio-opaque dye, lipoidal or the pentopaque, is injected through the punctum into the lacrimal sac area, and the serial radio imaging is done either by X-rays or by the CT scan and the MRI. And area where there is obstruction is noted on. And even when there is some tumor in the lacrimal sac, you can see it as a filling defect, okay, thereby diagnosing the case. So this is about DCG. One more test called as radionucleotide dacrocystography. Here the radioactive tracer like sulfur colloid is instilled into the conjunctival sac, and then the imaging is done to know exactly where the obstruction is. It's also called as lacrimal scintigraphy. So these are the various tests which are done to know the level of obstruction by helping in the management of a case of watering. Okay, so hope this video on watering was useful to all of you. If you like my videos, please do subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon for further notifications. Please do like and share my video.